One of the busiest guys out here on NFL Super Bowl Radio Row, Conor Rogers over at NBC Sports, Pro Football Focus, the NFL Stock Exchange with Trevor Sikkema, who our fan base is in love with right now. And
love to hear it.
Understandable,
yes.
Right? I mean, the guy knows everything backwards and forwards, dialed into the draft. So are you, Conor. You did your NFL Stock Exchange Cardinals series, and I thought it was unbelievable.
Thanks, man. I mean, they're a fun team because of the blueprint, right? You know what you have in place with the coaching staff, with the GM. There's obviously a good case of work from the draft last year with them able to maneuver the board, and they have a lot of picks. That's it. When you're in the business of the draft, you like talking about the teams that have a lot of picks, might have a lot of needs, but that gives you a little bit more of an open format to solve those. So we've had a lot of fun talking Cardinals this year.
There aren't a lot of teams that can follow usually like the Madden franchise mode, where you just sell off all your players for future draft capital and free up as much space. But that's exactly what Monty Austinford has done. But as you mentioned, along the way, he had a strong 2023 draft class. Who did you see as some of the building blocks from that class?
Well, I think obviously when you start with the very notable top in Paris, somebody that I'm fascinated by his future because he plays right tackle, and then is he going to be able to flip over to the left side with the kind of athlete he is? That's somebody that you have expectations for him to be able to do that if you need. And that allows the draft board to fall to you this year. There's a lot of guys in the first round of this draft that only played right tackle in college. So if you're comfortable with Paris playing on the left, you're in a position where you could take the right tackle. So that's a good place to be. Also, Michael Wilson is somebody I have my eye on because it was a little bit of a roller coaster. It's not like he was a top 2-round pick anyway. He had the injuries in college, but he really had the talent of a top 50 prospect without those injuries. And then you look at this offense and what it looks like when Kyler Murray returns. This is an offense that could throw down the field, that could be more explosive. How does Wilson figure into their long-term plans? Because they have a lot of draft capital for a great wide receiver class. Maybe you lose Hollywood Brown in free agency. Does that elevate his role? I think he's somebody that's ready for a number 2 or at minimum a number 3 role. So those are the very obvious guys, but it's easy to have your eyes on them. My favorite player that they drafted, just based on where they got him, is Ojulari, PJ Ojulari. And he's a small sample size guy, but when you go in and watch the pass rush snaps that he got, that he was allowed to rush on an island with speed, I saw a lot of promise that I saw at LSU, and I want to see him more comfortable in year 2 where he can handle a larger workload to capitalize on a bigger snap count.
Now, and we talked to Trev about this as far as, before you get to the draft, you have to start to kind of put some pieces in place as far as free agency. Like, I know you guys are so geared up towards the draft, but do you see anybody out there that could kind of start to kind of get this team going the right direction, continue off a strong 4-win season, which is a weird thing to say, but the momentum that they had with Kyler and JG, who would be a good addition to maybe supplement a really strong draft class?
How about look at the pass rushers, right? That's where this free agency class is really, really strong. And I think that this draft class is good, but if I'm Arizona, I'm not looking to use that top 5 pick on a pass rusher. I don't know if I want to do that with the other first-round pick, so why not go buy that? You always want to buy away your needs so you go into the draft and get the talent. This free agency class is really good. Now, we'll see who gets there. We have a lot of different names, whether it's Jonathan Grenard from the Texans. I think he makes it a free agency. Bryce Huff from the Jets, he's going to make it a free agency. Brian Burns, that's a big one up in the air. He's a great player for the Panthers. Those are high-profile names of pass rusher that will probably go to new teams or could go to new teams if you roll out the paycheck. So if you're Arizona, you want your defense to get a lot better. You signed a big-name pass rusher. Ojulari is maybe your number 2. And now you can look at the draft and go, we're going to get a corner, we're going to get some skill talent, we're going to continue to build this offensive line. Now you're starting to compete in that division.
I mean, when you look at the defensive line from last year, it was a team that, competed despite, the lack of talent. I think the front 7, we have it sourced, that's where they're going to look to spend some of that free agent dollars. The interior, the defensive line, which have some intriguing players there. Throw some dollars there, maybe get a veteran corner, but then we get to this draft. We'll start with 4, and I don't think, as you said, it's offensive heavy, probably wide receiver, right? Do you see it is a lot of people do 1, 2, 3 quarterback, and then the Cardinals is saying, come to Papa Marvin?
What a place to be. He's the best player in the draft. It's the easiest pick to make, right? And because he's the best player in the draft, it's a need. Even if it wasn't a need, you still take him because he's better than almost anyone else. And if you're really sticking by Kyler Murray, which you should, I think he's almost become underrated in this weird NFL world of quarterbacks. That's a connection that really excites you. And then it allows your other pick to maybe you focus a little bit more on need, but the board will fall to you the right way. And I think it's going to be quarterback. Maybe one of those teams in the top 3 gets really cute and takes calls, but a team's coming up for a quarterback, so it doesn't matter. So Arizona, is in a great spot despite some surprising wins down the stretch to push them out of that top 3.
What would be your philosophy at 27 then? Because some of the fan base, some of the people in my replies are like, "Oh, trade out." It seems like a good place to trade out. But I look at a rebuilding team, not a whole lot of big contracts down the road. Why not take advantage of that 5th-year option? Continue to do what you did last year. Lean on premium positions early. They went tackle. They went pass rusher with Ojulari. They go corner and Garrett Williams, and then Michael Wilson is one of their top wide receivers. Do you go at the premium position at 27, and is it on the offensive or defensive side of the football?
It'll depend how the board falls. If a guy like Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois, falls into your lap because he didn't get to go to the Senior Bowl, but the tape is top 20 tape, I mean, you run the card in. He's a difference maker on the interior. He's a guy that could play 80% of the snaps. Great against the run. I thought the scheme held back his pass rushing. He played running back in high school. That's the kind of athlete we're talking about at 300 pounds. But then it's not always going to go the way you want. Could you look at tackle again and kind of bookend him and whoever you take in Paris? Tyler Guyton was down there at Oklahoma. He's a guy that played on the right side.
27?
It feels like it's gone like a meteor, right? Just shooting up like that. So that's where it gets interesting. Could Troy Fontenot from Washington, who's that flex tackle guard, fall down the board because he had to pull out of the Senior Bowl? And then I like the depth of this corner class. We were talking about Quinyon Mitchell before we did this stand-up, and I mean, he went down to Mobile and dominated, and everybody's like, oh, a corner from Toledo. Didn't play any press in college. He goes down to Mobile, and he dominates with his hands and physicality. He's a great athlete. So if the board falls your way, where one of the top players is a corner, Garrett Williams is a great story, and I think he's going to be okay at the next level. But go get your future number 1.
Not a bad philosophy. So 27, 35, then you can start getting into maybe the defensive line crew, like Byron Murphy. But I want to ask you actually real quick with Guyton just rocketing up. Like, how do you have your tackles kind of ranked? And are you going to do a full 300 again this year?
Oh, yeah. Got to make it happen.
This guy's an animal.
You never want to go downward, right? When you give the people 300, it's like, well, now I can only go deeper than that. That's the problem. Don't ever do it.
So how do you have, like, the top guys, Fashanu, Alt, however you have them scouted, and then you start to look at, who's the next tier, and how do you have those guys ranked? Let's maybe get maybe 5 deep.
Right. So, I mean, Alt is number 1. Alt's a guy that he's so good. If he went 4th overall, I'd be like, he's just so good. I get it. Fashanu is my next guy up from Penn State. And then I like Taliza Fuaga, who we got to see in Mobile. I mean, he's a massive hulking right tackle that could just maul in the run game. Then Amarius Mims for me from Georgia, another kid is 6'7", didn't play a lot in college, was super talented. Another right tackle. And then I like Guyton at 5, and J.C. Latham's my 6th guy. Some people think he's going to go in the top 10. So that shows you where the tackle class is right now, and you have a million guys that are this in-between tackle guard. We talked about Fontenot, Graham Barton from Duke. There's so many different players like that. So if you're Arizona, you can kind of play the board and go, if there's one we like at 27, we'll take him. But if we're not too hot on them, we could wait a little bit longer as well.
I would hesitate with other guests, but with the 3 third-round picks that they have here, and we'll finish up here quickly, like the 3 third-round picks, the Arizona Cardinals can find starters there. Monty's already proven that with 2 starters in the 3rd round. The defensive line, the offensive line, I even think you could go wide receiver if you wanted to. Looking at it, Mobile, we saw some really stellar performances. Who are some names that the Cardinals fans should know about?
I think Jamari Thrash from Louisville is a guy that can win down the field. And if you're letting a guy like Hollywood Brown that's in that mold walk in free agency, but you can replace him in the 3rd round, that's really good value. Thrash is someone for Louisville. He was a transfer. He came in. He dominated in the short area. He dominated over the top. He goes to Mobile, and not a lot of guys were catching the ball out there. He was catching the ball. So that's a good name to keep an eye on. If another one is Roman Wilson from Michigan. That's kind of his range as well. When you look at the D-line, T'Vondre Sweat might be one of the most interesting players in this draft. I have been going to the Senior Bowl for 8 of the last 9 years. I can't remember a player choosing to not weigh in. He did not weigh in, and it's not because he was light. So Sweat,
is he 4 bills? What do we know about him?
You know what? I would set the over-under at 398.5 while we're here in Vegas. But man, Sweat, he is so good on tape. He takes up so much space, so he can push the pocket. He's going to play about 30% of the snaps. But Jordan Davis did that, and he went in the 1st round. So Sweat, if you can get him to the combine and he weighs 375, and you can get him in the 3rd round, it completely changes what teams can or can't do against your defense.
That's beef, man. And Jonathan Gann and Nick Rollis, they like to run a 5-man rotation in the interior defensive line. That's perfect. I mean, Jordan Davis kind of fallen back a little bit since JG left, but Sweat, Murphy, Darius Robinson was a huge guy.
Massive riser. I mean, you're looking at top 40 now for Darius Robinson from Missouri, who it's nice he could play up and down the line of scrimmage on the defensive line, because then you're getting a 2-for-1.
Any hidden gem that we're leaving out here?
Oh, man, when you go down this list, how about Christian Haynes from UConn? I mean, he comes into Mobile. This is a dude that's been playing on UConn's offensive line since like pre-pandemic, 2019. I mean, he was a projected 5th or 6th round pick. He was so good in Mobile. He's looking at the 3rd or 4th round. He's a right guard that I think has center flexibility, so he fits that mold as well.
Unbelievable insight from our guy Conor Rogers, the NFL Stock Exchange, PFF, NBC Sports, working out there with Matthew Berry and crew. You got to follow him on Twitter as well. Thank you so much for your insight, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.